My name is Sienna Enright, and 2 hours before the grand opening of the restaurant, I spent 14 months building. I learned exactly how much betrayal a person can survive before something inside them hardens into resolve. At 5:17 p.m. on opening night, I was in the prep kitchen slicing microgreens for the final garnish tray when my father stepped into the doorway and delivered the sentence that changed everything. "Stay in the kitchen tonight," Gerald Enright said, straightening the cuffs of his jacket like he was preparing for a gala instead of gutting his own daughter. "Your sister is handling Marcus." He said it casually, efficiently, like assigning someone to mop a floor. Not Marcus Aldridge, the lead investor who flew in specifically because of my culinary background. Not Marcus Aldridge, the man who had funded restaurants in New York, San Francisco, and London. Not Marcus Aldridge, the investor whose team had spent months reviewing a pitch deck built around my reputation, my resume, my awards, my food. Just Marcus, as if I were invisible, as if I were kitchen staff in a place I created. And in that moment, standing there in my chef whites with my hands still damp from washing herbs, I understood something that should have been obvious months ago. My father never intended to fix this. He never intended to add me after opening. He never intended to make it right. He intended to use me until the doors opened, and then lock me inside the kitchen forever. And that might have worked if Marcus Aldridge hadn't already known exactly who I was. The man at the hotel bar. 2 years before Enright's table existed on paper, I met Marcus Aldridge in Philadelphia after the National Rising Chef Invitational. I had just lost in the semifinals. Dessert round, my weakest category. I was sitting at the hotel bar in my chef jacket with the sleeves rolled up, drinking bourbon I couldn't afford, and replaying every plating mistake in my head, when a man in a navy suit sat down, one stool away, gray hair, trim beard, no wedding ring, watch worth more than my monthly rent. "You overworked the lavender reduction," he said without introducing himself. I turned and stared. He lifted his glass. "But your duck confit in round 2 was extraordinary." That was Marcus. At the time, I didn't know he financed hospitality ventures across 3 countries. I only knew he understood food. We talked for nearly an hour, not about money, about flavor memory, regional sourcing, why most investors ruin restaurants by chasing scale too quickly. Before he left, he handed me a card. "If you ever build your own place," he said, "send me the proposal yourself. Not your manager, not your father, not your business partner, yourself." I kept that card in my knife roll for 2 years. When my father called me 14 months ago promising partnership, I told him about Marcus. Gerald's eyes lit up like a man seeing treasure. "Perfect," he'd said. Now I understood why. Opening night begins at 6:45 p.m. Enright's table opened its doors. The dining room glowed amber under suspended Edison fixtures. Every table was booked. Local press occupied table 12. Town council members sat near the windows. 3 regional food bloggers lined the chef's counter with cameras ready. Marcus Aldridge arrived at 7:02. I saw him through the kitchen pass. He entered wearing charcoal wool, carrying no entourage, scanning the room once with the practiced eyes of a man who notices everything. Blah intercepted him halfway to the host stand. My sister wore ivory silk and confidence she hadn't earned. She extended her hand. Marcus shook it politely. Then he looked past her, straight toward the kitchen, toward me, and smiled. Small, knowing, deliberate. He recognized me instantly. Blee didn't notice. She launched into her rehearsed speech. Marcus, welcome to Enright's table. I'm Blee Enright, co-owner and creative director. He let her finish, then said calmly, Where is Chef Sienna? Blee faltered for half a beat. My father stepped in from nowhere. Sienna is tied up in the kitchen, he said smoothly. Blee handles guest relations. Marcus looked at him for 3 full seconds, then nodded once. Interesting. That single word landed like a knife tip on porcelain. The dinner service. Service began, and I cooked like my life depended on it, because in a way it did. First course, charred peach crostini with whipped goat chèvre. Second, sweet corn velouté with chanterelle oil. Third, smoked trout over shaved fennel and citrus ash. Fourth, duck breast with blackberry. Gastrique. The same dish Marcus remembered from Philadelphia. Every plate leaving my pass was flawless. Every course drew praise. In the dining room, I could hear admiration rising table by table. But from the kitchen doorway, every compliment was redirected toward Blee. Blee explaining pairings, Blee smiling for photographers, Blee receiving congratulations for recipes she couldn't pronounce. At 8:14 p.m., Tommy approached my station holding his phone low. You need to see this. On the screen was the restaurant's live Instagram feed. Blee had just posted a photo beside Marcus with the caption, Proud to share my culinary vision tonight with legendary investor Marcus Aldridge. My culinary vision. My hand tightened around plating tweezers until they bent. Tommy said quietly, Say the word and we walk. I looked at him, then at the line cooks, the prep staff, the dishwashers. They were all watching me, waiting, and for the first time in 14 months, I made a decision that belonged entirely to me. No, I said. We finished service. Then I untied my apron, folded it once, set it down, and walked out the back door. The speech. At 8:32 p.m., Marcus Aldridge stood up in the dining room before dessert service. He tapped his glass lightly. The room quieted. Blee beamed beside him. Gerald stood near the wine wall, smiling like a man already spending money. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and removed an envelope. Inside was the ceremonial investment check. $5 million. The room erupted into applause before he even spoke. Then Marcus raised his hand. Silence. I have funded 32 restaurants, he said. And I have never invested in a business whose owners lie about who built it. The applause died instantly. Gerald's smile vanished. Blee froze. Marcus held up 2 documents. In one hand, the investor pitch deck featuring me as co-owner. In the other, the LLC filing naming only Gerald and Blee. These documents contradict each other, he said. One is fraud. The other is theft. Gasps spread across the dining room. My father stepped forward. There's been a misunderstanding. Marcus ignored him. He looked directly at Blee. You introduced yourself tonight as the creative vision behind this restaurant. Then he asked, What is the third component in the duck gastrique? Blee opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Marcus folded the $5 million check in half, then again, then tore it cleanly down the middle. The sound was louder than applause. Then again, and again. until shredded paper fell onto the white linen tablecloth like snow. No integrity, Marcus said, no investment. He placed the torn pieces in front of Gerald, then turned and walked out. Collapse. Panic spread instantly. Local press started recording. One blogger was already live streaming. Council members left their tables. 2 suppliers quietly exited without dessert. Blah burst into tears in the center of the dining room. Gerald came storming through the kitchen rear exit 10 minutes later. Red-faced and shaking, he found me sitting in my car behind the building. "You did this," he hissed. I stared at him through the open window. "No," I said. "You did." He slammed his palm against my car door. "You ruined this family." I leaned closer. "You ruined it 6 months ago when you filed papers behind my back." Then I drove away. The aftermath. By morning, the story was everywhere. Investor pulls funding from local restaurant amid ownership fraud claims. Marcus's legal team opened an inquiry. Because the pitch deck had crossed state lines under false ownership representation, the matter became more than family betrayal. It became financial fraud. The bank froze Gerald's expansion loan. Suppliers suspended contracts. Blee deleted every restaurant social media account within 12 hours. 3 days later, Enright's table closed indefinitely. It never reopened. Tommy's call. A week after the collapse, Tommy called. "I found a lease space," he said. "Where?" "Old Rail Depot building. East Side. Cheap rent. Needs work." I laughed for the first time in days. "With what money?" He paused, then said, "You should check your email." Marcus Aldridge had sent one message. Subject line, "For the right chef." Inside, a revised investment offer. Not to Gerald, not to Bull. To me, sole owner. 1 year later. Today I'm standing in the open kitchen of Alder House. My own restaurant, 40 miles from Mill Haven. We've been open 11 months. We're booked 6 weeks out. Tommy is now executive sous chef. The duck gastrique is still on the menu. Marcus owns 18%. I own 82%. Last month, Alder House was nominated for Best New Regional Restaurant. My father has not spoken to me since the night I drove away. My mother sent a birthday card with no return address. Blee tried once to call and ask if I'd mention her in a marketing interview. I hung up before she finished the sentence. And sometimes when service slows and I catch my reflection in the pass window, I think about that moment in the kitchen doorway when Gerald told me to stay hidden. He thought keeping me invisible would make me powerless. What he never understood is this. You can hide the chef from the dining room, but if the food is hers, the truth always reaches the table. 3 months after Alder House opened, on the busiest Saturday night we had ever had, my father walked through my front door carrying a sealed envelope in one hand and the same expression he used to wear when I was a child, and he wanted forgiveness before apology. I saw him the second he entered. Even across a packed dining room, Gerald Enright carried his own gravity. People moved aside without realizing why. Conversations dimmed near him. He still wore authority like a tailored coat, even after losing everything. Tommy caught my eye from the pass. "You want me to throw him out?" Part of me did. Part of me wanted to tell the hostess to say there was no reservation under his name and let him stand there until pride forced him back outside. But another part, the older wound, the daughter-shaped one, needed to hear why he had come. So I wiped my hands on my apron, stepped out of the kitchen, and met him near table 9. He looked older than he had 3 months earlier. Not dramatically, just diminished. His expensive jackets no longer fit like armor. His shoulders curved slightly inward, as if shame had physical weight. "I need 5 minutes," he said. "You have 2. He handed me the envelope. Marcus Aldridge's name was written across the front in precise black ink. "I didn't write it," Gerald said quickly. "He asked me to bring it." That made me pause. Marcus never used intermediaries. Never, unless the message was meant to carry consequences. I opened the envelope right there beside the wine station. Inside was one folded page, only 4 lines. "Sienna, your father has requested a meeting with me regarding a new venture. I declined. He says the matter concerns your mother, and I believe you deserve to hear it directly before I make any decision. Marcus." I lowered the letter slowly. "What does my mother have to do with Marcus?" Gerald looked around the dining room. "Not here." I should have refused. I should have gone back into my kitchen and left him standing there. But something in his face stopped me. Fear. Real fear. Not humiliation. Not anger. Fear. I told Tommy to cover the line and followed my father into the alley behind the restaurant. The November air was sharp enough to sting lungs. Gerald stood beneath the security light and removed his gloves with trembling fingers. Then he said the sentence I never expected to hear. "Your mother is leaving me." For a moment I thought I had misunderstood. Judith Enright had spent 35 years orbiting Gerald like a moon trapped in gravity. She defended him when he was cruel, excused him when he was dishonest, translated his selfishness into business decisions. "She filed for divorce last week," he said. I stared. And she's taking the house." That almost made me laugh, not because it was funny, because it was absurd that this was somehow why he had come. "You came here to tell me your marriage is collapsing?" "No," he snapped, then caught himself. "She's named Blee and me in a civil fraud complaint." My breath stopped. "What?" "She hired attorneys after the investor incident. They subpoenaed records, bank transfers, LLC filings." He swallowed hard. "She says I used marital assets to commit fraudulent misrepresentation and concealed liabilities from her." I looked at him in disbelief. Mom knew. She claimed she didn't understand the legal implications. She signed documents. She says she was manipulated. I almost admired the irony. After a lifetime of helping him silence everyone else, Judith Enright had finally discovered the usefulness of victimhood. "What does this have to do with Marcus?" Gerald hesitated. Then came the real reason. Because Marcus still has influence with the regional banking board. There it was. The ask. Always the ask. He could stop the fraud referral from escalating if he gave a character statement. I laughed once, cold and sharp. "You want me to convince Marcus to protect you?" "He respects you. He trusts you," Gerald corrected. "Not anymore." He stepped closer. "Sienna, if this case moves forward, I could lose everything." I met his eyes. "You already did." He looked away. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then his voice dropped lower. "There's something else." And somehow, against all logic, it got worse. Blay is gone. Gone where? She emptied the remaining business accounts and disappeared. I felt the alley tilt beneath me. How much? $212,000. My sister, the woman who had stolen my title. My ownership, my career, had stolen from him too. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I felt exhaustion. A deep, marrow-level exhaustion that comes when betrayal becomes family tradition. When did she leave? 10 days ago. And you're just telling me now? She sent one message. He handed me his phone. The text from Blay was short. You taught me business is survival. I'm surviving. Don't contact me. I handed the phone back. For the first time in my life, Gerald looked defeated. Not angry, not controlling, just hollow. What do you want from me? I asked. He answered immediately. Talk to Marcus. No. His head jerked up. Sienna. No. He stepped closer, desperation cracking through his voice. If I'm charged, they'll destroy me. I held his gaze. You destroyed yourself. Then I turned toward the back door. But before I could open it, he said quietly, I did love you, you know. That stopped me, because it was the cruelest sentence he had ever spoken. Not because it was hateful, because it was too late. I faced him one last time. Love without honesty is possession, I said. And possession is not love. Then I went back inside. Marcus called me personally the next morning. I assume your father spoke to you. He did. And? I'm not helping him. Silence on the line. Then Marcus said, That's the right decision. The fraud case moved forward. Within 6 weeks, Gerald was charged with financial misrepresentation. Blay remained missing. Judith filed full asset seizure motions. The Enright family home was ordered sold. The local paper called it the fall of the Enright Empire. But the real ending came 3 months later. On a rainy Thursday morning, I received a certified letter from Blay. No return address. Inside was a cashier's check for $87,000 and a note written in her sharp, slanted handwriting. This is your share. I should have let Dad destroy only himself. Don't look for me. That was the last time I heard from my sister. 6 months after that, Gerald accepted a plea deal. No prison time. Probation, restitution, permanent business restrictions. The judge barred him from holding executive ownership in any registered company for 10 years. The man who once believed he owned every room he entered was legally forbidden from controlling one. A year later, my mother came to Alder House alone. No makeup, no wedding ring, no excuses. She sat at table 3 and ordered the duck. When I approached after dessert, she looked up at me with eyes older than I remembered. I chose silence for too long, she said. I said nothing. Then she placed something on the table between us. A leather folder. Inside were the original handwritten recipes I developed during those 14 months. Every notebook page I thought had been lost when Enright's table collapsed. She had saved them. All this time, I thought someday you might want them back, she said. Then she stood and left. No apology, but not every repair begins with words. Today, Gerald lives alone in a rented apartment outside Mill Haven. Judith volunteers at a literacy center. Blay has never resurfaced. And Alder House just signed papers for its second location. Sometimes guests ask whether Enright is still my last name. Legally, yes, but in every way that matters, I built something stronger than inheritance. Because in the end, the greatest revenge was never watching my family collapse. It was surviving long enough to stop carrying their ruin as my own. And I thought that was the end of the story. Until the morning a young woman walked into Alder House, introduced herself as Blue's daughter, and handed me a photograph that changed everything I thought I knew about my sister.